Hi, it's Peter Schweizer, and welcome to the Drill Down. Well, Donald Trump has canned the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, setting off widespread opposition to the move in Washington, D.C. But was he justified in getting the head of the BLS fired? And what does it say about the larger issues of experts and how they've failed us repeatedly? We're going to have that conversation today. And of course, the co-host of this program is 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐥𝐿. 𝐃, how are you?
I'm excellent. I'm glad to be one of the few people not fired by Donald Trump. You know, we knew the economy was going to crater with all these tariffs have come into place. Between tariffs and deportations, we knew the economy was going to be in tough shape. Apparently, this job loss is one you cannot attribute to those other two decisions.
Yeah, and I think this is a bellwether, by the way, because it's not just about the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's about the larger issue of what do you do when people that are experts, that are supposed to be the truth tellers, are flatly wrong consistently. What recourse do you have? Let's look at a couple of the reactions to the firing of the head of Bureau of Labor Statistics. The first one is from Kevin O'Leary talking on CNN about Trump firing her.
We're used to volatility. We had a bad print on jobs. I did not agree on whacking the commissioner. I don't like that. Whacking statisticians makes no sense whatsoever. You don't shoot the messenger. They used to do that in ancient Rome. Bad news, they kill the guy off the horse. You don't need to do that now. It doesn't matter. This is a job where you just print data. So I didn't like that story.
So, you know, we're going to talk about this more, but his argument here is, well, this is just data. And we're going to unpack how they get that data and what the real problems have been with that data. Here's a second take from one of our favorite people, Elaine Chao, the former labor secretary and the secretary of transportation in the first Trump administration, again, talking about this firing.
I was labor secretary for 8 years. So I have watched over 8 years of monthly releases of the employment and unemployment numbers. First of all, it is very, very difficult to tamper or to interfere with these numbers. As has been mentioned before, hundreds of people have their hands on these numbers as they are being formulated from the state level up. And the Monday before the Friday of the first Friday of the month that these numbers are released, the process is very much locked down. BLS is very concerned about the security of these numbers.
Yeah, so that's the second take, right? That these numbers can't be manipulated, which of course we're going to unpack further. But you know, here's my take on all of this. Imagine you're in a job and you do the job so terribly that you are off by a massive factor. Let's just look at some numbers. Bureau of Labor Statistics last year, this is even before Trump was president, in March of 2024, had to revise by 818,000 the number of jobs that were actually created. In the Biden administration, they overstated the number of jobs in the U.S. economy by 1.18 million, accounting for approximately 36% of the jobs that had been initially claimed to have been started. So imagine you have a job, you're an accountant, you're working for a company, your numbers are off by 36%. Imagine you're a plumber performing some plumbing job and your estimates are off by 36% of what needs to be done. Would that not be grounds for consideration to be fired? And yet, there's this defense of this lady saying, oh, wait a minute, you know, you can't do this because somehow these numbers are sacrosanct and we can't do this. It's an absurd standard, and it's something that the expert class has created for themselves. This idea that even if we do our job poorly, we get to keep it because we're the experts.
Yeah, it's actually one of a number of things that we'll talk about today on this program that, well, we've been told this, but then, well, that actually didn't turn out to be entirely accurate. And these numbers from Erica McIntarfer being among the things that apparently are less accurate. You mentioned the fact that they've had to revise over 1 million jobs in the Joe Biden administration. By the way, I think it helps explain why Joe Biden and his people were like truly dumbstruck. Like, well, the Biden economy is terrific. Why aren't people so happy with this job that we've done? Everyone's got a job. And it's like, not exactly. There's about 1 million fewer jobs than we said there were. And it's not just about like the numbers being wrong when Joe Biden was president. These job reports have been overly optimistic they've been wrong, and these faulty job reports have allowed the Federal Reserve to continue the policy of keeping interest rates high, which has been a chief frustration of the Trump White House. So it's like when you're wrong, it's wrong for one thing, but when you're wrong and they make other decisions that other people also disagree with because you're wrong, that's another problem. My favorite part of this entire story, by the way, is that this allegedly nonpartisan, just this humble statistician who's got no rooting interest whatsoever, she announced and responded to her dismissal in a post on Blue Sky, which is where all the nonpartisan, purely objective statisticians go to talk about their losing their jobs.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, and then we're going to look at some other areas like immigration, climate, et cetera, where we have the same failure of the expert class. And to me, it boils down to a couple of things. Number one, they completely overestimate. They try to emphasize at the beginning their authority and their ability to know things that the rest of us don't know. So when they release the Bureau of Labor statistic numbers, they say this is how many jobs was created last year based on the data that we have. They're very precise and they're very direct about it. Then when they do revisions, that's somehow kind of hidden in something that they do later on, and less attention is being paid to it. And the problem, as you point out, is this has real world implications. These numbers determine all kinds of things, what the Fed's going to do, what our policies might be in Congress about what they've had. So it has real consequences. When they get called out on them, and this is the pattern we're going to talk about in other areas, they immediately revert to their appeal to authority, right? Which is a classical logical fallacy to say, well, you can't question me. I'm not going to debate you. I'm just going to say, well, I'm the expert and you're not. And you see the same thing here. You see it in Elaine Chao's response, which is basically, well, these people are highly professional people. That's not the question. The question is, are they good at the job in which they are doing? And if they're not doing a good job, maybe we ought to think of other people and other methods to try to figure this out, because this clearly is not working when you're off by a factor of 30%.
Also, by the way, you heard Elaine Chao try to move the goalpost and talk about how, well, they protect the numbers. It's not like they let other people see them, which isn't the issue at all. It's like, who cares if you see the numbers? Are they right? Are they wrong? And they're wrong. If it helped, maybe more people should see them. But that's also apparently not true, because the White House, in putting out a prolonged statement about why they made this move, not only did they cite a number of instances in which the numbers have been wrong, they cited a number of instances in which the data has been loose, been shared inappropriately, other people have had access to it. Yeah. And so, and this is important. It's like Clarence Beeks taking care of the orange juice report and trading places. These things matter to people. Yeah. Money's moving because of this thing. So, so it's not been a well-handled situation, but it's interesting that Donald Trump, it comes off like he's making the move because he doesn't like the numbers, but that's not, to Kevin O'Leary's point, what he's doing. He's saying, look, this has been somebody who's been in charge of a department that's done a poor job, and we need to see it better. But that's to the larger point that we'll be talking about today. It's one of a number of instances in which the things we are told by the people who are supposed to know the best are often maybe not entirely accurate.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. Clearly this area of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I think, is the contemporary issue, the important issue. But there are lots of areas in which the expert class has told us things and declared things that ended up being fabulously wrong. One of the ones that is in the memory of a lot of us is going back to the COVID days, right? We remember what we were told about the vaccines. If you take this vaccine, Joe Biden said it as president, but of course he said it because he was fed it by the health experts. If you take this vaccine, you're not going to get COVID, and you're not going to pass it to anyone else. And that ended up being fundamentally wrong. And look, my point is that, again, in this area, I understand that these things are not precise in the sense that you don't have full knowledge, but they act. The point is they act with a certainty and with the claim that they have complete knowledge, and it's a settled debate. That's the problem in it. If they came out and said, hey, we think this is going to be helpful, that's one thing, but that's not what they do. And whether it's in COVID, whether it's in Bureau of Labor Statistics or climate change, they fall into this same sort of arrogant pattern. And when they're called out on it, they resist and they condemn the critics rather than actually dealing with the facts.
By the the way, a common theme in all three things you just talked about, this gets a little bit wonky, but between Bureau of Labor Statistics, between climate change and predictions of like, doom and gloom there on the vaccine stuff, it all comes down to modeling and which coefficient or number next to the variable you want to pick and why you might want to pick that number versus another one. And that number matters a lot. Yeah. And based on which number you pick, based on like your rationale for modeling, I mean, they did the same thing on how many potential illegal immigrants have voted in previous elections. It's just about, hey, here's our data. This is what we project. This is what we model based on the data. And it does seem consistently that the models tend to skew a certain way. Yeah. And the vaccines and going back again, it's 2025, so we're 5 years removed from the fevered pitch of all the kind of the fear mongering. Mm-hmm. But we saw a story recently that fundamentally changed the way we should be thinking and talking about vaccines. But go back and remember, it's not just, hey, we should take a vaccine. Millions of people were faced with the idea of losing their job if they didn't take a vaccine. New York Times analysis from December of 2021 said 12 million public employees were subject to a mandate. At least 49,000 people in the public sector probably lost their jobs or were disciplined for noncompliance as of that time. Other estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs because they refused to take a vaccine. And because, then you don't care about your neighbor, you don't care about yourself. It was like, you have to do this if you want to take care of yourself.
And they were wrong. And they were wrong.
Because of a new Stanford study that says, this is crazy. How is this not a bigger deal? Yeah. We could have done the entire podcast just on this. A Stanford University-led study that just came out last week says that COVID-19 vaccinations saved not about 17 million fewer lives than previously reported. They're now suggesting that the COVID vaccine saved 2.5 million lives from 20 to 2024, not like 20 million lives. They say that's the equivalent of one death averted for every 5,400 vaccine doses administered worldwide.
And look, and to your point, you raised a really important point about modeling. That study is also probably based on modeling, but
we like this modeling.
Yeah, well, but the point is, like, the number may even be lower, right? Depending on whether that actually conforms to reality. But the point about the modeling, I think, is vitally important because models are created by what? By experts. They're saying this is what we believe that the pattern would be in reality. So we're going to extrapolate or we're going to erect a model based on certain assumptions that we are embedding in it. And when we get the climate section that we're going to talk about in a little bit, massively wrong, all based on modeling. So this is the thing that everybody has to keep in mind. I think, experts are fine. You want to have experts, especially in certain areas where it's critical. But this arrogant notion that they adopt, that everybody else needs to shut up and focus on what we have to say, and nobody else can have an opinion because we're the experts, and then you totally flame out later on. People remember that, and what ends up happening is people have a lot less trust in the medical establishment now than they did 5 years ago.
So we can talk, let's do green energy last, only because it's like still more forward thinking. But the point is, we've got two other areas. Like the vaccine thing is one where you have this new study, like, everything we told you, probably not entirely accurate.
Stop the spread of these diseases. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
These vaccines are highly, highly effective.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
They're really, really good against variants.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
Get your first shot, and when you're due for your second, get your second shot.
Our key goal is to stop the transmission, to get the immunity levels up so that you get almost no infection going on whatsoever.
A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die.
I cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
If you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
Anyone who is fully vaccinated can participate in indoor and outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physical distancing.
Companies and personalities are making money by peddling lies and allowing misinformation that can kill their own customers and their own supporters. It's wrong. It's immoral.
There's been over a 20-to-1 return.
If you had put that money into an S&P 500 and reinvested the dividends, you'd come up with something like $17 billion, but you think it's $200 billion.
Here, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing about those clips is the certainty with which they speak. There's no, we believe that this vaccine's going to help. It's going to, and if you don't obey what we say and do, people are going to die. And the other thing to point out, by the way, is, that was a great montage with media personalities, politicians, and experts. A guy like Joe Biden says that because all these experts that he respects and believes in are telling him this, and he adopts it. And that's where we get to the state today where people don't really trust experts anymore.
Right. So we got kind of, we heard all this stuff about vaccines. We now have some data from some Stanford scientists that suggest maybe they're off by approximately 90%.
But they're not interested in that data, by the way. You notice that Rachel Maddow's not using that data, right?
They're not using it. So let's talk about a couple other areas that we've been told, like that these Trump policies might be just as dangerous for the country as the COVID virus was. And one of them is, incredibly dangerous for the economy. These tariffs. You may have heard that Donald Trump's a fan of something called tariffs.
Yes, that's right. And I saw a lot of panic on Wall Street and in the news media that this was going to be. We were going to go back to the 1930s, right? Yeah. This is a replay of the tariffs in the 1930s, and we're going to have this massive economic calamity.
A chief economic advisor for one of the world's largest insurance companies told CNBC at the time that the risk to the global economy of a major recession would go up 50%. 50% probability of a major recession. We've heard lots of other kind of doom and gloom things. Chuck Schumer saying that, quote, this is the most disastrous and poorly thought out policies that the Trump administration has done thus far. Donald Trump's even being trolled by reporters. Like, well, if this is such a good idea, why didn't you do this before? Listen to how Donald Trump handles this.
You're weighing your decision to do that, your authority to do that, based on a 1977 law. It's never been invoked before. Why didn't you invoke this law?
Well, we've been winning all along.
I just want to ask you, why didn't you invoke this law in your first term? You could have taken in billions upon billions of dollars in your first term, but you waited until your second term.
Yeah, because in my first term, I was fighting lunatics like you who were trying to do things incorrectly and inappropriately to a president that was duly elected. And we did do certain tariffs in the first term.
Yeah, it's amazing. So they criticize him for enacting tariffs, and they say, but you didn't do this in your first term. You're being inconsistent. Look, when it comes to tariffs, what people in the expert class have failed to do is they have these models, they have these assumptions, they have this projection on Trump. They think Trump is crazy. He doesn't know what he's doing. So when he was negotiating these tariffs and saying, hey, we're going to have 125% tariff on China, it was a negotiation strategy. It was an approach that Trump used. And guess what? It worked. We didn't get the massive recession. We didn't have the economic calamity. The economy is doing great. The stock market is up massively from where it was when the initial shock occurred, and all the experts were panicking everybody. And it's another example where people are less inclined to believe what economists or experts are saying because they're just so blatantly wrong.
Tariffs announced 4 months ago, almost today, Liberation Day. S&P, when they announced it, was at 5,600. Today, it's over 6,300. NASDAQ was at 17,600. Today it's over 20,000. Dow Industrial's up another 2,000 since the announcement again in the last 4 months. In fairness to the reporter and other people that think that Donald Trump is either crazy or unserious when he's declaring some of his economic policies, he was fielding a question about his tariff policy in front of a professional wrestler and a golfer. Like, I mean, that's just who Trump rolls with. He's like, no, we're going to do more push-ups, guys. That's our pathway to get his...
That's America's great export, professional wrestling, right?
That's true.
We're going to buy pharmaceuticals from you, but we're sending you wrestlers.
I'm going to handle your tariff question after we hear from Triple H, everybody. Which is really what happened.
Yeah. But again, this is the problem I think that's also happening is we're all used to on social media clickbait, right?
Yeah.
They give give you a headline, you think, oh my gosh, I got to read that headline. And then you read the story and it has very little to do with the actual headline. It's the same thing these experts engage in now. They want to pretend and act as if they are these dispassionate parties who are just about the ideas, who are just about the thought. They're all peddling their wares. They want attention. They know that headlines that say, well, tariffs might possibly have a minor effect on the American economy is not going to get them attention. So they've got to go into panic mode. But again, they wrap themselves in the cloak of expertise. I'm this renowned economist, or I'm this, person in a large financial firm, and people are somehow supposed to believe them. It's a discredit to what experts are actually supposed to be. And climate change is a prime example of that.
Climate change is a prime example of it. Do you realize how much money the Biden administration spent on climate change?
How much?
$1 trillion.
Oh, wow.
They are like bragging in November of 24. So they've already lost the election.
Yep.
And so new data released this week showed that the Biden-Harris administration invested $1 trillion in manufacturing infrastructure and clean energy investments since taking office. $400 billion for semiconductors and electronics, $91 billion for clean energy manufacturing, $49 billion for heavy industry, $188 billion for clean power. So they're pushing all of our money in because of why are you investing in green energy? It's not just because you think it's good for the economy, although clearly it's good for some people in the Biden administration's economy, but it's because you believe in the idea of climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
And, the New York Times talks about how, we're really trying to keep global temperatures from rising by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit from pre-industrial levels. That is the threshold. They say that there's significantly greater risk from increasingly destructive storms, droughts, wildfires, and extreme weather. So that's the previous administration. What do the new scientists say?
Yeah, well, the Trump administration is skeptical of those claims. And there are scientists out there that talk about the fact that, look, the data just doesn't match. And again, you used the term before, modeling. That's what so much of the climate science is based on. In fact, I'm old enough to remember back in 1998, the UN had a climate change, then they called it global warming, investigation. And there were questions they believed about whether Florida, the state of Florida, whether it would have beaches anymore because it would be such a high level of sea rise. Well, we can report now it is 27 years after that study. There are plenty of beaches. There's been no a dissipation of its size. But the point is, again, it's panic that is sold. And I think if you want to make the claim, and you can certainly make the claim that you believe that it's possible that human behavior might be affecting temperatures at the margin, you can make that claim. The problem is you've got all these hysterical scientists out there not saying that. They're saying the whole planet is going to be on fire with these dismal predictions, these exaggerated claims. And so people don't even want to listen to somebody making a reasonable claim that maybe things might be getting slightly warmer.
Yeah, so the Biden administration is like, here's $1 trillion to save the planet. The Trump administration is like, you know what? In 2009, we had this thing called the endangerment finding, which said that greenhouse gases pose a threat to public health. We don't believe that anymore. It's gone. We're throwing it out.
Right.
And so they're doing that because they hired 5 scientists to do a study. And in these 5 scientists put together this report, and it says the scientists criticized computer models used to predict climate change, saying they tend to overestimate warming. They also say that carbon dioxide, the most prevalent greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, has positive effects by helping plants grow and increasing agricultural productivity. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes me feel good. And I choose to save $1 trillion and feel good about carbon dioxide that way.
Yeah, carbon dioxide is supposed to actually help plants grow, right? They convert it into oxygen.
Do you know what that's called?
What?
What causes giving you a chance to flex?
No, I have no idea.
Photosynthesis, bro.
Yeah, that's right, photosynthesis. Yeah.
And poor chlorophyll is caught in the middle of this.
Chlorophyll? More like borophyll. Right?
No, wait. Photosynthesis, I thought, was from the sunlight.
I don't know. Forget about it.
I thought that had to do with sunlight photosynthesis anyway. This is not a science podcast per se, but here's the bottom line, I think, in all of these cases, and to sort of in summation. We need experts, right? We need experts. The problem is that the expert class, I would argue, has become corrupted. They make exaggerated claims. They get very defensive when people say you're not living up to what you claim you're supposed to be able to do with your brilliance. They get defensive. They attack critics, and they are intolerant. So when they talk about wanting to have a fair discussion and debate about issues, they don't really want to do that. And the end effect is it damages the reputation in general of expertise. And that's where we are today. People are highly skeptical in all these areas. They have a reason to do so. And that's not going to change as long as they continue to behave this way.
Right. Well, I would just say that I think it turns out I was correct. It was photosynthesis. So
You
the
are
next
correct.
time,
Okay.
So like I'm at least as right as the Obama and Biden administration EPA officials about
You
the $1
are
trillion.
correct. I took geology in college, rocks for jocks. That was my scientific experience. So
Well, you've written a lot more books than I have. So, like your
Not on
expertise-
science.
Not on science. But I would just say I think that, the point is just it's something to remember the next time the Trump administration announces a new policy, whether it's, they said, hey, we're going to start deporting all these people who are in the country illegally. We heard that was going to be terrible. And now we have stats that show 1.8 million native-born Americans got a job and 1.5 million foreign-born workers lost. There was a massive raid in a meatpacking plant in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was like the biggest ever. And so they lost a lot of their employees. The next day, they said the lobby was filled with people filling out job applications. We heard a lot of fear-mongering about that. You hear stuff about the food dyes and everything else. And it just shows you that these people who don't, to your point, they comment with certainty and a certain sneering condescension.
Right.
They are often wrong.
Yeah.
And, it's important to kind of do a little bit of digging to figure out just how wrong they are. And we've seen some really good examples of that recently.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we're going to continue to hold the expert class accountable, both sides of the equation. It doesn't matter. Again, we always advise people be smart in the information you consume. Look at a wide variety of sources. And if somebody makes an appeal to authority, where you're discussing some issue related to climate, you raise a good point, and the response is, I have a PhD in climate science. Okay, that's great. That's an appeal to authority, but that doesn't actually have anything to do with the debate itself.
Like what I should have said when you questioned me about the photosynthesis, I should have said, do you see this tan?
Yeah, and my lack of tan. Who spends more time in the sun and around plants? Is that
Checkmate.
what you're saying? Well, we appreciate you as always taking time to listen to the podcast. You can find out more about the work that we do at thedrilldown.com. We also would ask you that you please subscribe to our podcast. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.